I'm sure many of us know someone, if not you, who's felt uncomfortable talking about religion and money or just have feelings of shame or guilt about it. Welcome to Yahweh's Money, a podcast where we discuss the crossroads or intersections of religion and money. We're going to go deep into topics like tithing and saving and debt and so much more from the religious view. I'm your host, Shay Cook, CEO and founder, Crusaders for Change, LLC, and our co-host is Vanessa McNelly, one of our financial counselor, coach, educators. Let's talk about God and money. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Yahweh's Money. Today, we're talking about dad's devotion to duty. And I have my amazing co-host here, Vanessa. Hey, Vanessa.
Hi, Shay.
Oh,
I'm
my
ready for
God.
this.
I
Yeah.
know, right? Been talking about it for the last few weeks. And
Yep.
as we celebrate Father's Day this month, we want to thank and acknowledge all the dads out there that are fulfilling their fatherly duties with love, sacrifice, and devotion. We know that many times dads don't get appreciated the way they should, and we want to talk about that and a large amount of pressure that we hear often from fathers and dads out there, and the responsibility that dads go through in the fatherhood journey. So in 1 Thessalonians 2, 11 through 12, it says, "For you know that we dealt with each other, or each of you, as father deals with his own children, encouraging, comforting, and urging you to live lives worthy of God, who calls you into his kingdom of glory." So everything our Heavenly Father does for us is immeasurable and impossible for any earthly man to accomplish. We know that there are many dads out there doing their very best to be the protector, the provider, the disciplinarian, the role model, the wise counsel, and the list goes on and on. And as heads of the household, there is intense pressure on fathers to keep their fathers afloat. As rewarding as fatherhood is, it can also be stressful. So, what do you feel about all that, Vanessa, before we go further?
I think that each role, mom and dad, there's different pressures because there's different expectations.
Mm,
And, I think it's one of those unspoken things that, dad provides.
mhm.
Mom provides a lot of, comfort and support and emotional well being, while dads provide a lot of, the sternness and
Mhm.
making sure that everybody follows rules, regulations. They provide a lot of the financial stability and well being. So I can't imagine, having to be in that role and having all of that on your shoulders.
Yeah. It's a lot. My husband and I talk about that often. My brother just a
Yeah.
little bit, and my dad about it kind of frustrates me too as a woman, an independent woman. I'm like, you don't understand, you don't understand. You're right. I'm
Right.
not a man. I don't understand. But
Yeah.
I understand some of it, right? I can be
Right.
empathetic and sympathetic. I have at one time taken care of my daughter without my husband
Mhm.
and just my parents' help. I in different circumstances made a little bit more money than my husband. So I understand that. That's another conversation for another day.
Yeah, yeah.
So all of that and the pressure that the
Mhm.
man just has, and I think that comes from childhood and just growing up their role
Exactly.
models of who they're supposed to be when they become a father.
Mhm. Exactly. Yeah. And then a lot of men don't have good role models in their
There
lives.
you
A
go.
lot of men are raised by single women. I know my dad was one of three raised by a single mom who worked night shift.
Mm.
So when you don't have that and then you see what other people do have, it's, I'm sure that pressure is even stronger on you to, to be and do what you're supposed to.
Exactly. And my husband as well is from a single mother family.
Mhm.
And yeah. And a lot of unfortunately men are.
Mhm.
And not just only, people say African American families, no, across the board, it doesn't matter. There are single
Exactly.
mothers of all race, all
Exactly.
ethnicities taking care of their
Mhm.
children. So, but that's not what we're focusing on today. We're focusing on the fathers. So we're focusing on the fathers that are holding it down,
Exactly.
that are feeling that pressure, and it can be,
Mhm.
it can really drive some mental health issues, especially
Right.
if you can't provide your family financially.
Mhm.
It's just a lot. It really
It
is.
is. Yeah, it is. And I think it's one of those things too where the expectations of men are so different than the expectations of women.
Mm,
And the man feels like he has to, go and push and do
yeah.
when, you're missing out on a lot at the same time.
Yeah.
So it's a double standard,
Double standard. Exactly.
but it's there.
Yeah, it really is. And according to an article from in verywellmind.com, dad's mental health is often overlooked. they're under a lot of pressure to not have mental illness, not have mental health issues, not feel emotionally exhausted or emotionally compromised. So why is there a stigma around mental health and fathers? Oh my God, that's a whole nother issue too, and a whole nother
It
segment of
is.
podcast episode.
It really is. And I think, you and I both come from a military background,
Mm-hmm.
and there's even a bigger stigma. It's getting
Mm.
better. But, I know my ex husband, I'm sure you guys too, suck it up and drive on
Mm-hmm.
because, you don't have time to take the time in that moment to take care of yourself. It's like, suck it up, move on. There's other stuff that has to be accomplished. And I feel like a lot of men feel like that if they show emotion or they cry or they get sad or upset, that they're weak. It's seen
Mm.
as a weakness.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it's really not at all.
Not
I
at
mean,
all.
there's a lot of strength in that, to let things out and to take care of yourself. Just as we talk about all the time, taking care of yourself is taking care of everyone else.
Exactly. And vulnerability is a beautiful thing that people are scared
Yeah.
of and have fear around. And I was the oldest of three children. So my dad, he really wanted a boy when he had me. So he kind of raised me with that mentality of not
Mm-hmm.
crying, to suck it
Mm-hmm.
up, be strong. All these other
Yep.
emotions are weakness. So I too, even though I'm a female, can identify with that just because of the way my father was raised us, me and my brother and my sister, but mostly me and my brother because we're only 2 years
Mm-hmm.
apart. And I,
Mm-hmm.
I was really like that. Don't tell me you can't do, I can't lift this, I can't run this, I
Right.
can't play this sport,
Mm-hmm.
because that's how my dad raised us. And, so I guess I was kind of raised like they raised men, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And so you bring that into a marriage, or I did. And now I have this
Mm-hmm.
power struggle with my husband about, because he has that dad father role, but also that man role. And I'm like, but I was
Mm-hmm.
raised to do this kind of stuff too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, because I think I have a lot of that as well. But
Yeah.
my dad was more of the sensitive parent,
Mm.
honestly, growing up, which is a little different.
Yeah.
My mom was more the stronger
Oh.
person, the lack of emotions. But yeah, yeah. So it's one of those things where I don't know. I feel like everybody has their own, weaknesses and strengths, but showing vulnerability in those weaknesses, it's a beautiful thing.
And that's where the stigma comes from. How
Hmm.
our upbringing, how we were raised by mothers or fathers, and how we are, or identify, or how we react or respond to different situations and emotions from other people, or emotions within us.
Hmm.
Or like you said, told her to suck it up. And there's that emotion that oh my, I'm sad, there's sorrow, there's fear. You're not supposed to entertain all that as a
Yeah.
man, quote unquote, or a strong person, quote unquote, however your
Hmm.
parents raised you.
Hmm.
You're supposed to not deal
Yeah.
with that. And so then there becomes mental health issues, because we focus on
Exactly.
everything from, physical health mostly, or
Hmm.
sometimes, and maybe
Hmm.
relationships, but hardly ever do we focus on mental health. And as our
Right.
company, Crusaders for Change, try to help you with your financial health, people don't focus on that either. So then
Hmm.
there's a stigma, because you're not
Right.
supposed to have mind issues, even though the mind controls
Exactly.
everything.
Exactly. Well, and even just men in general talking with their friends,
Mm,
they don't talk about these things. I think like women
yeah,
do a lot of times. We confide in our friends and we
exactly.
spend time, talking about what we need and what we're lacking and
Mm-hmm.
all of these things too. And men are, they're taught to not even have those conversations at all, even with friends in a safe space. So it does really get bottled up, which just creates more of a
Just
problem.
creates more of a problem. And then you
Hmm.
wonder why, they just fly off the handle if something happens, and
Yeah,
yells or screams at their kids or their spouses or their family, or because they're not dealing with those emotions that are inside of them, and they boil
exactly.
up, and they explode. I see many
Mhm.
explosions from my father and
Mhm.
my husband, because they're not dealing with mental health issues, they're not dealing with those emotions. And so, but we still honor and love our fathers out there that are doing their thing. Yeah, but we know that it's real hard. There's
Definitely.
pressure, and the pressure comes, what if you basic pressure comes from things that are constantly pushed down, and then the
Right.
pressure eventually has to go somewhere, and you
Yep.
explode.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you usually have those explosions or take it out on people who are closest to you,
Mm-hmm.
and that's another thing too. I mean, when you see dad get really angry over something and you think it's your fault at that point, and it really has
Mm,
nothing to do with you at that point. It's
exactly.
just you're just in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah, that is so good. And, I don't know where this is coming from, but recently in my therapy session, my therapist shared with me that they were dealing with some issues from childhood that their father used to lock them in the closet
Mm.
when they were bad.
Oh.
And so they, thought it was because it was about them. And so they attribute that to
Mm-hmm.
no love, no, and it was really just a disciplinary practice, which was not
Yeah.
very good and scary for her, and she had to deal with it. And I
Mm.
say all that, and I mention that experience and situation because those kind of things that you're doing the best that you can as a parent, right? And fathers do.
Right.
There's no manual out there that really tells you how to
Mm-mm.
be a father. And
Right.
when he thought he was doing the right thing, he's probably taught that from his parents, just like spanking and
Mm-hmm.
all that kind of stuff that comes into
Mm-hmm.
the picture. And you just do the best you can, and
You
but
do.
that can lead your children to having mental health issues, right? Or if you have an addiction or whatever you as a
Right.
father are dealing with and not help yourself or dealing with within yourself, that transpires, and that's where that comes from. You're saying, those closest to you are affected the most.
Right.
Yeah.
And it becomes generational then, and you
Yeah,
pass it
exactly.
down. Yeah. I mean, growing up, I know my father, he was always the disciplinarian when it came to things.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you, I don't think there were many times in my life that he actually put that into play,
Mm.
but he would pull off his belt. He would fold it over and he would smack it on itself. So
Yeah.
you'd hear this it was like,
Mm-hmm.
this really
I know, I'm
horrible
familiar.
sound.
Yeah.
And it would scare the bejeebers out of me. And it was one of those situations where I'm sure that's what was done to him when he was
Mm-hmm.
little. But that stuff didn't work on me or my
Mm.
brother, taking something away or just making me feel bad about what I did
Yeah.
was way worse on me.
Yeah. That shame and guilt can do a number on a
Hmm.
person, especially a kid
Exactly.
or a teenager.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is crazy. Well, throughout the centuries, providing economically for a family has been a main responsibility for a father. According to fathers.com, having an income is important, but the level of income is not as important as a steady income that meets the
Yep.
family's needs. So, having a higher level of incomes means nothing at the expense of having a well connected relationship with your children. And
Right.
so, I mean, really, I mean, it makes sense. Steady income, even though if you have higher, you enjoy more luxuries of life, your quality of life might
Mm-hmm.
increase, but a steady income is very important to a
Yeah.
father.
Yeah, and I feel like there's this pressure on men to
Mm.
provide financially, and I feel like it's still bigger on men than women
Mm-hmm.
at this point in time. But I can tell you, like growing up, I would have given anything to have my dad at things than have things. So
Amen.
just have his presence and
Mm-hmm.
his input. I would have much rather me and him have little dance parties in the living room than him pay for ballet lessons.
Mm.
Like, those are just things I would have rather had. I would have loved to have had time with him. But I think men are taught to buy people's love.
Mm.
When you pay for things, you're showing your
Yeah.
love. And I still have that with my dad
Mm-hmm.
today. Like, he wants to buy things for
Mm-hmm.
me because that replaces the time.
Yeah.
And I always have to tell him, just because you do this isn't going to make me love you more or less. I want to do things with you and have
Mm.
memories. And I think that's really hard for a lot of dads.
That's powerful, Vanessa. And you're so right. My daughter recently, or in the last few years, says, Daddy's love language is buying things.
It
And
is,
that
yeah.
kind of just, but then I told my husband that he's like, no, it's not. Like, he's like, and I can't even remember what he said, why, or what his real love language was. But,
Yeah,
to Alana and my daughter, our daughter, and to even me, like you said, spending time is more
exactly.
precious than
Exactly.
buying a pair of shoes or a
Yeah,
house or
yeah.
whatever. And then we ain't did that, but or whatever. You did,
It's so
yeah.
true. Yeah. I mean, and in the past, I've dated men with children,
Mm,
and they would have second jobs. I know one guy I dated would work every night during the week to pay for his two boys to play sports.
mm,
And I'm like, if you took half that time and spent with them,
mm-hmm.
it would be so much better. You
Yeah.
could take the time to teach them what you know about these sports and let them choose something, obviously, to play with school, but
Mm,
you don't have to do it all.
yeah.
You can pick and choose, and it's okay to let your kids have that decision.
You're so right.
It's a good practice for later in life
Yeah.
too. But I mean, time with your children or your family or your spouse or your parents, it's
It's
priceless.
priceless. It so is. You're so right. And there's so many people out there, especially in the age of social media and so many other things, trying to keep up with everybody that are
Right.
paying and taken away from this precious time with their family
Yeah.
to work extra or to make more money, not to pay the debt off that we recommend, not to save for the future emergencies, but to pay for the extra activities,
Exactly.
the extra clothes.
Mhm.
Recently in our class that we
Mhm.
had going on this week, somebody mentioned to me, I work extra so I can buy the $300 Jordans for my 17-year-old. I'm like, what? Come on, man. They need to get a job. So, I mean, I
Exactly.
didn't say that. And I mean, I might have said a little
Yeah.
version of that because I just get frustrated that
Mhm.
parents are killing themselves and not
Yeah.
living their lives. When, of course, our children, you
Exactly.
sacrifice for your children. Totally understand that. But where does that
Mhm.
sacrifice end? Like,
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and there's lessons that can be had
mhm.
in the sacrifice
Yeah,
that will last your children a
a
lifetime
lifetime.
because it teaches them how to deal with these situations. I used to work with a couple that they were coming to me, and we would have these financial counseling sessions together, and they didn't own a car. They worked minimum wage jobs.
Mm,
They would take Uber back and forth to work, but their goal was to save enough money to pay a down payment for their daughter's house.
wow.
And it was one of those situations where they really wanted the best for their child.
Mhm.
But at the same time, them having reliable transportation would have been
Yeah.
priceless. Priceless for them because they could take that vehicle and go see their child and their grandchild or,
Mhm.
all these things. But it's surprising to me how much parents will do without for their kids.
Yeah.
And in fact, it's not helping their children.
Yeah.
It's not helping at all. It's hurting the situation
That's
later
true.
on.
And it's hurting themselves. I was
Exactly.
one of those parents earlier on. I was like, I'm not gonna do, I wasn't really doing a lot of self-care for myself. I was
Mm-hmm.
buying more clothes for my daughter than myself. And I think it was my grandmother that said, Shay, why are you still wearing sweatpants? Why you got a scarf on your head?
Yeah.
She was like, girl, you need to do something. What are you doing? I was like, I gotta take care of my daughter. She's like, you need to take care of yourself. And she was right. Cause I
Mm-hmm.
did that for like the
Mm-hmm.
first 2 years of Alana's life. Like I was like
Mm.
everything I was and am was Alana.
Yeah.
And it's like my grandmother was the one who was like, no, this is enough. And so,
Mm-hmm.
but then
Mm-hmm.
now that I talk about it 10, 20 years later with family members, they're like, oh yeah, we was wondering why you were doing all that. I'm like, why you didn't say something? You know what I mean? It's like, I mean, thank God my grandmother did. I might have continued it for longer. But I was like, yeah, it's okay to
Mm-hmm.
get my hair done. It's okay to, or take or do my hair.
Yeah.
It wasn't even about going to a salon. It was just I literally was like, I'm not doing my hair. I wasn't nothing. I was just like, everything was about her.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I had a job, but
Yeah.
I just didn't really take care of myself because I like everything has to go into her. And it's like, oh, that's
Yeah.
not right.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
fathers do the similar things. You see that
They
they don't
do.
buy for themselves. They don't take care of themselves because it's all about their
Mm-mm.
kids or their
Mm-mm.
family. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
please take care of yourself. Please go
Exactly.
enjoy a round of golf or, a night
Mm-hmm.
out with your friends or
Mm-hmm.
a guy's trip, whatever works for you. But don't sit
Exactly.
around thinking all you have to do is take care of your kids. I
Exactly.
mean, you got to take care of them.
Exactly.
And for the
Yeah.
fathers that
Yeah.
are taking care of them, because there's a lot of them out there that are not, we thank you and we're honored
Mm-hmm.
that you are. But yeah, you shouldn't sacrifice yourself
Right.
for that because, like you said, self
Agree.
care is taking care of the family too. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And you look back on a lot of this too, and I don't know if you've ever thought about this, but you think about your childhood
Mm-hmm.
and you think about what you remember about your childhood. It has nothing to do with the things for the most part.
Mm-mm.
It's about experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And I can honestly say I have so few memories of my father as a child
Mm.
that it's so sad.
Oh.
But you think about that,
Mm-hmm.
and he was working or he
Mm-hmm.
was off doing whatever
Mm-hmm.
at that point. But it's one of those things where, what he has purchased for me
Mm.
during those years meant nothing, nothing. So parents and especially fathers need to think about that too, about that time
Mm-hmm.
and having those relationships with their kids. And a lot of them do. And I have some great guy friends that are single fathers and
Mm.
raise, multiple kids alone.
Mm-hmm.
And there are so many good dads out there. But when you think back, think about the things you remember as a child and use that to help you be a better parent.
Exactly. You're so right. And my dad was on the opposite end. So even though he was a service member for 22 years in the army,
Mm-hmm.
he was there. Like my dad, and
Mm-hmm.
I told my mom this recently, and she was like, "Wow, it's like I don't. I mean, my parents used to go crazy around Christmas. I mean, they used to buy us way too many gifts on credit and had a lot of debt. but beyond that, my dad made us breakfast almost more every morning after PT. He
Mm-hmm.
was at almost all of our athletic games. He was part of our bowling team.
Yeah.
Man, my getting chills. My dad, I mean, he
Mm.
had his issues and he still do. We all do. But he showed up.
Mm.
And in our adulthood, my dad has not missed one major moment in my life, in my daughter's life, in my brother and sister's lives. You know, and my brother say some crazy ish about
Mhm.
dad didn't do this.
Mhm.
I want to choke him because I'll be like, you
Yeah.
are remembering the wrong stuff, bro. And again, that's his
Yeah,
perception. I don't want to diminish that, and I'm learning not to do that, but I know that my dad was there. Like, and
that's
so my
priceless.
husband, on the other hand, grew up no father and didn't, my father was not there at all. So he's trying to do the opposite of that. And so he too has always been there for Alana, like
Right.
all her major events and all that. Alana tried to come at him one time about that. And I stepped in. I was like, you are not going to do that to your father because your dad has always been there.
Yeah.
So,
Oh.
and so, yeah, I mean, so
Mm.
no, you know, I
Yeah.
I just want to honor both fathers did the best that they
Yeah.
could, right?
Of
And
course. And they all do for
yeah.
the most part. Yeah, they all do. Yeah. I mean, I know growing up, like my dad, I don't think he ever went to anything that I had.
Oh my
Like,
God.
he almost didn't go to my high school graduation. And then I was bribed to not walk at my college graduation.
Oh my
But I will tell you the thing that has changed me with my dad though is that he knows like what happened
God.
back then, and he is an amazing grandfather.
Mm.
He is amazing and he shows up and he is happy
Oh,
to
that's
be there and
good.
he's early, and I love the man he's become.
That's awesome.
Because he is such a good grandfather and it's so fun to watch that
Yeah.
and to see like that he understands now like time is everything.
Yeah. That's good. That's really good. Well, it says in Luke 12:15 that then he said to them, "Watch out, be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions." So, as we kind of sums up what we were talking about there, that it's
Exactly.
about the experience, it's about showing up, it's not about the possessions. Of course, you need money for the basic necessities and,
Yeah.
and if you want to achieve different qualities of or levels of quality of life. But the
Hmm.
pressure of providing can lead fathers to be overworked, absent, neglectful, irritable. Yes, that's so true. Angry, lead them to addiction and to be resentful. And I've seen that a lot,
Right.
unfortunately, from fathers who struggle trying to provide a quality of life that unfortunately they cannot achieve with the basic income
Mm-mm.
they have. They're trying to keep up with whoever, and it's just sad to see that. And I mean, I remember working at Walter Reed back in the day at the Army base, and a father committing suicide because he couldn't provide for his
Yeah.
family. So it can go as deep as that. So but fatherhood is a marathon, right? It's not a sprint
Hmm.
and it is rewarding and an honored duty. What are some ways that we can support fathers and show them our appreciation for the sacrifices they make?
Gosh. I think acknowledgement is number
It's
one.
huge.
Just acknowledge and
Hmm.
say, I noticed this and I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for what you do. And sometimes I think it's okay to say, hey, I know you're doing all this, but you don't have to.
Hmm.
That's another thing we can talk about is, you know, it's wonderful and I love it, but I would rather have you. I'd rather
Mm.
have time with you. I would
Yeah.
rather, us like have a picnic than us go out to dinner every Saturday night or
Yeah.
whatever it is. And I think it's something that as partners, your partner should help keep everything in check too. A husband and a wife or, whatever situation you're in, have that conversation with your partner and say, okay, this is what we're doing. And I thrive in these environments and you thrive in these,
Hmm.
but let's make sure that we keep each other in check with all this.
Yeah.
So neither of us feels like we're over or having to do too much.
Exactly. Yeah, I concur. That acknowledgement is huge. I even recently I
Yeah.
make fun of my family because I told my mom her children are hard to be married to, and so thankful to the in laws, my husband and my brother's wife and my sister's husband for dealing with us
Hmm.
children of Lana and Mitchell because we are difficult to deal with. And so just acknowledging, so I was making fun of that with her and we were laughing at it. And when my husband came in, I said, thank you, just thank you for what you do. Thank you for dealing with these, we say toll kids, that's my maiden name, and dealing with the toll kids because we're not easy to deal with. And thank you for
Yeah.
being always being there for, your child as a father,
Hmm.
because that is
Mm.
monumental. I mean, I know God is shining or, smiling down on the fathers that are
Yeah.
there, even if you don't have all the money, even if you don't have all the
Hmm.
knowledge, even,
Hmm.
time, long as you're
Hmm.
there and you
Right.
giving your time, your energy as best as you can. That's a
Yeah. Yeah.
privilege. Yeah.
And the men who step in.
Yeah.
That's another
Well,
thing
the
too.
father figures that are not necessarily the father. Yeah.
Yeah, because there are so many good men out
Yeah.
there that take on this role when they don't have to.
Mhm.
Nobody's asked them to do it.
Exactly.
It's amazing. I mean, my grandfather, I have so many amazing memories of my grandfather growing up.
Mhm.
Like he kind of filled that role
He
for
did.
me.
Yeah.
And it was little things like, you know, I remember I wanted to have an Easter egg hunt and it wasn't anywhere near Easter. So the man goes and gets paper and pencils and crayons
Oh
and we make
wow.
fake Easter eggs and he hides them around the yard for me.
Oh, that is awesome.
Just my life with him growing up was filled full of those little moments that
Mhm.
cost absolutely nothing except for his time.
Wow.
And he gave it to me and it was 100% mine.
Mhm.
And I wouldn't have had the childhood I did without
Yeah.
him. So I'm very thankful for that.
That's awesome.
So yeah, so these guys who step in, no matter if it's a boyfriend, a brother,
Uncle,
whatever it
anybody.
is,
Yeah. Just a
yeah, or
friend
just
from
a
work. Yeah,
exactly,
exactly. Yeah.
exactly, yeah. It's amazing
It
to
really
see
is.
that. Hmm.
It's beautiful. In Psalms 127, 4 through 5, it says, children born to a young man are like arrows in a warrior's hands. How joyful is the man whose quiver is full of them. He will not be put to shame when he confronts his accusers at the city gate. So just being proud of your children and
Hmm.
just joyful,
Yeah.
right? And, other ways to support, father or father figures is to pray with him, honor them,
Hmm.
write them a letter. I was thinking that recently, writing a letter to the fathers that are, or father figures in my life, or wash his car, cook them a meal, do the yard work,
Yeah.
encourage them to talk about
Right.
their feelings, which is important. Don't shame
Hmm.
them. We talked about that
Hmm.
earlier. Laugh at their dad jokes. So I have to say, there's nobody in my family that are like not dad jokes are not funny, so that's a good thing. And listen to their ideas. So most
Hmm.
dads want to know that they're doing a good job raising their
Hmm.
children, and that's the best way we can honor them, is in the way we live our
Exactly.
lives as well. And I was thinking about that the other
Yeah.
day. I was like, we honor our fathers even if they were good or bad or in between or
Hmm.
did the best. Most of them do, but that's how we live our lives.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, and I think a lot of them, they just want to make sure that we're going to be okay when they're
Yeah.
not there, you know? Because I know that's a conversation me and my dad have a
Mm.
lot because, my dad has terminal cancer.
Mm.
And, he wants to just make sure that I'm in a good position so that when he's not here anymore, because we're all going to be in that position at
Yeah.
some point, that I'm going to be okay,
Mm-hmm.
and I always joke and say, I'm not the one you have to worry about, you know, but, they want to make sure that, you can make sure that, financially you're okay. You can
Mm-hmm.
make ends meet, that, in relationships you're in a good place too, because they want you to be happy
Yeah.
and they want you to be loved.
Mm-hmm.
So there's so many ways to have those conversations and, keep them a part of things.
That is so true. Wow, what a beautiful episode. Dad's devotion to duty. We love the dads and the fathers out there. Super proud of them, those that are showing up as best as they can. So, any final thoughts, Vanessa?
I just, if you are a man and you have time, just remember time is so much more precious than anything else to give your children or your nieces, nephews, your parents, even at that point. So just make sure that, you give them time first and foremost.
Exactly. That's lovely. And also just remember that, mm, the time thing, I have to honor that because that's super important. Oh my God. I just lost my train of thought, but it's all good because Vanessa just ended it very well. But just honoring them and showing them that you
Mhm.
love them and saying thank you to them is very, very important. So thank you for joining us today for another episode of Yahweh's Money. Don't forget to follow us wherever podcasts are found. And remember, it's always better Yahweh's way. Thank you for listening to this episode. We hope you enjoyed our deep dive into the crossroads of religion and money. Also, we would love to hear your feedback on today's episode, so please leave us a review or just tell us what's on your mind. And remember to follow our podcast. If you have any questions or suggestions of topics for us to discuss, please email us at yahweh@crusaders4change.org. To hear all of Yahweh's Money latest episodes, please visit us at www.crusaders4change.org or wherever podcasts are found. God bless.